Mark Carney's conflict of interests have been released by the investigator, and it turns out that he has over 100. What does that mean for me and you as Canadians? Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. So it's official. The Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics has released its report, and it indicated that Mark Carney has at least 103 conflicts of interest. 103. Most of them tend to be about businesses. Now, how does that impact you and I as Canadians? You think, well, he's just going to be, kept out of the loop. The man was hired by the Canadian people. He was elected because he was supposed to be Mr. Brainiac in business. He was supposed to be Mr. Tough Negotiator. Now we know that he's not a tough negotiator. But let's just look at this from the middle, okay? Here's a guy who is supposed to be trying to get a country out of economic despair, out of economic collapse, and he cannot talk to 100 of the world's largest corporations. How does that help us, guys? How, for example, if it were me, I could talk to any of them. I could understand it. Mark Carney, he can't even hear about it after the fact. He has to wait until the paperwork and the deals are signed, put into place before anybody can give him a single solitary word on it. Anything else is a violation of the ethics codes of Canada. Anything else is criminal activity. Whether or not he does that is something that I guess we can leave open for debate. But what it actually is a criminal act. So here we have some of these companies that are in this list, guys, are going to be the ones leading the way on power generation. They're going to be the ones leading the way on AI. How is it that Mark Carney hopes to establish getting AI and power generation inside of the country if he's Mr. Super Duper Negotiator, yet he's not allowed to go into the room? He's not even allowed to hear about it after the fact. Until it's signed into deal and formed into law, he can't hear any of it. He has to wait until just like me and you, we have to hear the deal after it's all said and done. So what is he doing there? How is it that now we elected Mark Carney, or I didn't, but many of you elected Mark Carney on this idea that he was Mr. Businessman, Mr. Negotiator. And as it turns out, he's not allowed to negotiate with any of the businesses that he might be able to entice to come into Canada. He can't even do that, guys. He can't entice them to come into the country because then he could be enticed. It could be viewed or construed by some people that he's trying to bring specialized companies into this country to only make himself rich while the rest of us suffer. This is an important wrinkle here. So not only did you think that he was going to be better for the country when you selected him over Pierre Poilievre, because you said in your mind, especially people of a certain generation, that he, being a rich elitist, is going to somehow understand what Donald Trump is about. There's two different pathways there. Now, they might currently rub shoulders in the same circles. I'll grant you that. But they didn't arrive there in the same boat. Mark Carney left the country to go to a very elitist university. He then went to Europe and went to another elitist university. He's held the job of the big banks. He's rubbed shoulders with kings, right? Donald Trump is a land developer, part-time television actor, television celebrity, I guess you would call him. Nowhere in there has he ever run a bank, for example. Nowhere in there has he ever set interest rates and all of that stuff. But you have to remember that in the interim, while Mark Carney was coming up and taking his money and taking the jobs and doing all those things for those investment bankers that, destroyed the country in 2008 and all of that. Well, Donald Trump was up and down, sideways, he was rich, he was poor, he was rich again. These are the kinds of things that mold a character. Donald Trump spends a lot of his time around people that are in the construction industry. I mean, maybe not since he became a television star, but certainly for a long period of time. Mark Carney, on the other hand, has been rubbing shoulders with people who think that they're intellectually superior to everyone around them. Now, you wouldn't know to look at me, but I understand academia quite well. I certainly understand the personalities that are involved and what can only be called ego. that comes along with getting a diploma from Harvard. It comes, especially in those days, not before it was a world-class joke that it is now, but in, getting a diploma from Harvard used to be, that would get you through the door. Now, what am I trying to get you to understand? Well, first of all, Mark Carney can't negotiate any of these deals. So one of the reasons that you've selected him, he's not allowed in the room. Secondly, he's not a good negotiator anyway. He's good at figuring out how to manipulate the rules. That's what a corporate raider does. But he's not a person who's ever sat down and hammered out a deal. He's not a person that's ever sat down and fired up his own business. He's a guy that uses other people's money to buy your company, your hard work, and then make it his own. That's what a corporate raider does. He's never going to be able to solve the problem with Donald Trump, and I have been telling you that from the beginning. But let's just leave that aside for right now. Let's just put that over there. Let's try for a minute to understand the position that Mark Carney is coming from, the mindset of an elite, wealthy individual who has never had any trouble or any hardships financially in his life. He mocks and boasts that he doesn't do his own grocery shopping, that he doesn't know how much milk and bread cost. I would go one further and have you appreciate that he doesn't understand or know how much the household that he lives in costs. He doesn't pay the monthly bill. He doesn't have it come to his phone. He has a staff member for that. As he's a banker, whoever's looking after his money probably assigned that person to his file to make sure that the credit card is paid, that the power bill is paid, that the water is paid, the taxes are paid, all of that stuff. Of course, we know that on these businesses and on these conflict of interest, we know that Mark Carney's not paying any taxes in Canada, as he hides it all in different tax shelters, like the Isle of Man is its current favorite one. So he's not even paying any of the money that he's earning. Remember that when you're out there saying, well, if he's this wealthy, he should be taxed at that higher rate, that capital gains rate. Doesn't care about that because he doesn't pay taxes in Canada. He hides his money. He pays it into places that are tax shelters, as a matter of fact. So he can keep all of it to himself without ever having to contribute to the roads, or the schools, or the hospitals, or any of the problems that you and I cannot escape. Any of the concerns and any of the things that you and I must always be here to take care of because we simply don't have the elitist looking after our cash. Now, you might say to yourself, well, he worked for that, he earned that, and it's not a problem. I don't agree that tax evasion is not a problem. I believe that it is a problem. I'll give you the rest of it, though, that it's not something that he should, have to be penalized for being rich. I don't think that you understand how far apart he is from your standard of living versus his. I don't believe you grasp or comprehend how he doesn't have to worry about what happens at customs because he simply gets on his private plane at a private airfield. I don't think you understand that he doesn't worry about whether or not he used more electricity this month because he never sees that bill. Or he doesn't understand that milk prices have gone up and bread prices have gone up and fruits and vegetables and all of the things that keep you alive are 2 times or 3 times what they were just 10 years ago when the Liberal Party took over the control of the country. He doesn't understand any of that. He sits down, he orders his meal, and it's brought to him. And you can again say, well, he earned that, he worked for it, all that kind of stuff. Maybe so, maybe no. What I'm trying to get you to appreciate is this is the guy that is supposed to be in touch with how you're suffering with your homeless problem, how you're suffering with not your homeless problem, but the rent issue or the cost of living. He's the one that's supposed to be able to be in connection with you. He's never had any of these problems. He's always been an elitist, right? When you get into Harvard, just by being there, you're going to be treated better. Just by being in Oxford, you're going to be treated better. He's going to pull heavily on that sort of social credit long before it was, on the internet. He's not going to understand why you have to put 3 of your children in one bedroom and you yourself sleep on the couch, and you have to plan your meal and figure out if you can save a little money on your bus fare. Otherwise, you're $1,500 in the hole every month. He doesn't understand that. When you go to him and you say, listen, there's a hunger problem, he's like, well, I'm going on vacation. When you're like, oh, food prices are through the roof and rent is out of control and there's a supply problem for the number of housing, which might look a lot like supply management, The less there is, the more it costs. Nonetheless, Mark Carney, he's gone to Europe. He's gone to England. He's rubbing shoulders with kings. By contrast, you look at a guy like Donald Trump. Yeah, all right, he's quite rich and all that stuff. Same rules, same thing, same applies, right? But when Donald Trump wanted to talk to the people, he goes to social influencers. He talks to people that are down here on the ground. He doesn't go to some of the most elite people on the face of the earth. I mean, you could say what you want about King Charles, but he still stands over a domain that is massive. The amount of money that they have is pretty severe, pretty substantial. Now, again, I'm not trying to cast shade on them for being wealthy. I'm trying to get you to understand that Mark Carney has no idea what you go through. Not a single solitary clue. He has no point of reference. All he knows is that when people push back on him, he snaps and snarls because he doesn't like people questioning anything about he believes that he's superior to all of us. That's what the term elite means. He believes that he's, a very select few. And as a result, anybody that tries to push back on him, anybody that tries to say there's something wrong with the way that you're approaching, or anybody who tries to say to him, hey, listen, through all of that rigmarole, how are you helping me, the person on the ground? And, as you bring in all of these people from other countries that don't have jobs or places to live, that's putting pressure on my job and my place to live. How are you helping me while you're doing that? And then he looks down at you and says, you don't know what he's doing. You don't know you don't understand. You see, that's the point. Like somehow you don't know what your life is like. He's the only one that doesn't understand. He's the only one that cannot grasp the amount of pressure that you're feeling every day. He doesn't have those problems, and he's never had those problems. Had you looked at a guy like Pierre Poilievre, now I can't tell you that he was dirt poor, but I can tell you that he wasn't rich. I can tell you that he took the train to school, and he went to school in Canada. There's a lot of things there that we can compare and contrast, but in my mind, when I think of which one of them is going to be closer to understand what hardships of the everyday average living is going to be like, it's going to be the guy who married the woman who comes from another part of the world and shared a basement apartment with her family for many, many years, who weren't raised with the silver spoon, who weren't raised with all of this elitist. So not only can Mark Carney not negotiate the deals that might be the companies that can come into Canada like Donald Trump is doing, that might be able to, the countries that come into Canada to companies that come into our country to help us rebuild and help us get our economy up and running. Because as I've told you, there's no way in the world they're not going to keep a tariff on our border. It's just not going to happen, guys. Let's grow up here. Not only can he not be the negotiator in any of those contracts, any of those deals, and the second that he is, someone like me is going to be calling foul. You can be sure of that. But he's not even understanding what you're going through while he takes a vacation on Canadian taxpayers' private jet and spends all of the money on the security and all of the money on the secret Wi-Fi, like the secured stuff like that travels along with him. It's a plane for him, and then there's a plane for the security's vehicles, right? Those vehicles don't just show up. They have to get there with him. They have all of the stuff on them. They travel with the prime minister. So you think that goes on the same plane? It's at least 2 planes. And the staff, because there's people that got to cook. Oh, I'm telling you, it's right out of Hollywood, right? And so you need to understand that he doesn't realize what you're going through and that's just being generous. We elected a man who has no idea how to solve the problem, no idea what we're going through during the problem, no idea, can't empathize with how much we're shouldering and how much of the burden that we are taking as the people, while he runs around saying we're not going to negotiate in public. Donald Trump has no problem negotiating in public. He puts it out on Truth Social, and the people that follow that account, of which there are millions, they weigh in, they say this, they say that, and the person that Donald Trump assigns to watch after his social media can give him a feedback on the temperature. Will Donald Trump listen to it? Who knows? Do any of them listen to it? Who knows? Some of them are going to take advice from some of them, and some of them are not. I can assure you that if you were to give opinions to Mark Carney, you don't care at all what you think. Obviously. Because you come to him and you say, I don't want any more. The immigration is too high. The levels are too high. Let's get things stabilized. We're in nearly 8% unemployment. And he went, yeah. And then flooded the country. We're on pace for like 1.5 million this year. We don't have a house for them to live in. We don't have a job for them to have. So who's paying for that money? That money is coming out of the government. No wonder he needs to cut so many jobs from the public sector. He's got to give that to the people that he's inviting into this country that have nowhere to go, nowhere to work. And yet, when you tell them, hey, listen, this is putting a strain on the doctors, this is putting a strain on everything. Every single solitary part of the system is being put a strain on this, and you're dumping them all into the same major cities. So now these major cities are screaming and crying and asking for more money. He shrugs his shoulders. He says, we don't negotiate in public. Don't worry about it. And he goes on vacation. See you in 4 months, he says. The idea that this guy is wealthy is not my point. The idea that he's so wealthy that he's completely out of touch with what you go through is my point. He doesn't understand it. He will never understand it. He doesn't have a point of reference from his childhood. He's never had to have these problems. And as a result, he never can associate it. He can never understand what you're going through. To you, your numbers, to him, your numbers on a page. You're a storybook. You're just something that he saw on YouTube. We need leadership that understands what we're going through so that those people, those leaders can solve the problem. Not tell us to wait another month, another year, another 5 years, another 100 years. Quit telling me to wait. We've been waiting. We've waited long enough. But Mark Carney is very tired now. He's been overloaded. He did 3 entire weeks in a row in the House of Commons. Obviously, he needs a couple of months off. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'll talk to you next time.